Okay, imagine this. You step out, it's morning, and the city has this quiet hum. Almost magical, you know?
Ah,
The sky's heavy, looks like rain's definitely coming, and then you hear that soft tap, tap, tap on the window.
yeah,
So you grab like a favorite sweater, maybe a scarf, and head out into that cool, damp air.
right. For a lot of people, that's just another gray day.
Exactly. But for the story we're looking at today, from a rainy morning in the city, learning English by living that morning, it's basically a classroom, but like without any walls.
It's definitely not your typical language lesson, is it?
Not at all.
Our mission today really is to sort of unpack this journey described in the source. We want to look at how these everyday moments, the sensory stuff, even tiny interactions,
Yeah.
how they become these surprisingly powerful tools for actually learning a language.
Mm,
We're trying to get beyond just memorizing words.
right.
It's about how language becomes almost a new way of seeing.
Exactly. This isn't about flashcards or grammar drills. This deep dive is all about understanding how you can truly, live a language,
Mhm.
how it changes your whole perspective. It stops being, I need to study English, and becomes more like, I'm using English to see things, to describe them, to feel like I belong.
Right.
And some of the insights here about how our brains actually learn this way and those little shifts in confidence, it's really quite eye-opening when you dig into it.
So where does this learning actually begin in the narrative? Is it like the first conversation?
Well, what's fascinating is that the source suggests the learning starts even before a single word is spoken out loud.
Oh, really?
How? The narrative kicks off before sunrise, and it's intensely sensory. You get these descriptions: wet, shiny streets reflecting the lamps, cars spraying mist,
Uh-huh.
that specific smell of wet stone and damp earth. It immediately pulls the learner into this very real physical experience.
Okay, I get that, grounding it in reality.
Right.
And then what happens? What's the next step in the source? Well, the protagonist, the learner, they start this internal monologue, just talking to themselves in their head.
Ah, right. Like thinking, wow, it feels quiet out here, or the rain makes things seem softer, things like that.
Exactly those kinds of thoughts. And your first reaction might be, like you said earlier, is just thinking in English really doing much?
Yeah, that was my thought.
But the source really emphasizes this as a crucial first step. It's incredibly powerful.
Okay, so break that down for us. Why is that internal voice so important?
It's a fantastic example of what linguists sometimes call comprehensible output. Even though it's internal, you're actively producing language.
Output, even if it's silent.
Precisely. Think of it as a completely private rehearsal space.
Mm.
Low pressure, no audience.
Mm-hmm.
So by translating what you see and feel into English thoughts, you're actually solidifying vocabulary, messing around with sentence structures, but without any fear of making mistakes in front of others.
Right, no performance anxiety.
Exactly. It bridges that gap between just understanding words you hear or read and actually starting to produce the language yourself.
Mm.
It starts making the language feel like yours. It's like mental exercise, consistently applied.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. The internal rehearsal stage. So those first brave spoken words, where do they fit in? The source talks about that too, right?
It does. After this internal practice, the character finds this little cafe, you know the type, windows all steamed up,
Yeah.
steps inside, gets hit with that warm smell of coffee, fresh bread, and then comes the first real attempt.
The actual speaking part.
Yeah, just, hi, could I get a coffee to go, please? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
A croissant. The source mentions the voice isn't loud, but it's clear enough.
And the interaction.
The barista smiles, nods, gets the order, and the source calls this a quiet kind of success.
A quiet success. I like that.
And it's more than just feeling good about it. This links to something called the affective filter in language learning theory.
Affective filter, meaning like emotional barriers.
Exactly. If you're anxious, self-conscious, embarrassed, that filter goes up high and it can literally block learning. It stops input from getting in properly.
Okay.
But this small, successful exchange, it lowers that anxiety. It validates the effort immediately, even for something super simple.
So the positive feedback helps.
Immensely. That immediate low-stakes success gives you a little dopamine hit. It creates this tiny micro-success loop, which boosts confidence and actually makes you want to try again. It speeds things up.
That makes perfect sense. Build on the small wins. So, okay, you've got the internal talk going, you've had a small successful interaction. How does the learning expand from there, according to the source?
Well, the character waiting by the cafe window with their coffee, they continue that internal description.
Ah, back to the internal monologue.
Yeah, thinking things like, everyone looks a bit different in the rain, or
Yeah.
colors seem deeper. Just observing, but crucially, observing in English.
So it's reinforcing that connection between seeing and describing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this is where the idea of sensory anchoring comes in strong.
Sensory anchoring. Explain that.
It means you're constantly tying the new language directly to real-world sights, sounds, smells, feelings, the wet street, the coffee aroma, the bus noise.
Right. Not just abstract words on a page.
Exactly. Unlike using flashcards, these words get deeply embedded in a lived experience. Your brain isn't just storing a word, it's linking it to a whole network of sensory input.
So the memory is stronger, more
Contextual, much more robust, much more natural to recall later. You're essentially building this mental landscape where the language actually lives and operates.
It's really interesting how those sensory details are framed as learning tools. So the character leaves the cafe. What then?
Coffee in hand, they just walk. No specific destination. And they keep noticing things. Narrow streets, ivy on walls, old doorways, shop windows.
And presumably still describing them internally.
Yes, hearing the hiss of rain, the bus hum, tires splashing, and those natural sentences keep forming. The city feels slower today, or raindrops are racing down the window. Maybe even more reflective things like rainy days feel more honest somehow.
It sounds like the language is becoming a tool for, well, for just noticing more.
It's a great way to put it. It's active perception. You're not just passively seeing, you're actively describing what you see.
Which forces the brain to connect the visual stuff with the language, right?
Right. It pushes the brain to make those connections more explicit. And again, it's not about perfect grammar at this stage. It's about genuinely responding to the environment, using the language.
So it integrates everything, seeing, hearing, feeling, thinking in the language.
Exactly. It demonstrates that real language learning isn't just about rules. It becomes the way you understand and even appreciate the world around you.
And then there's the bookshop scene, right? That seems important too.
Ah, yes, stumbling upon that little bookshop, the one that looks older than memory itself.
Yeah, the creaky door, the smell of old paper and dust.
Mm-hmm. Again, that internal voice continues, maybe whispering this time, wonder how many people have read these. Or, I love this smell on rainy days.
Still practicing, still connecting language to the place.
But then there's another interaction. The shopkeeper asks, looking for anything special?
And the reply?
Not really. Just escaping the rain. Just a simple, spontaneous exchange.
Born out of the moment.
Exactly. Wasn't planned, not a lesson. This highlights incidental learning, learning that just happens naturally in situations. And it underlines that learning is also about connection, about having the courage to just engage, even briefly.
So you're building social fluency alongside the language itself.
Absolutely. They feed each other.
Okay, so the journey continues. The rain softens.
To a mist, yeah. And the character keeps walking, keeps observing. Balconies dripping, flower boxes soaked, cats curled up inside windows.
And the descriptions keep coming. The mist makes everything look like a painting. Even the quiet feels fuller.
Yes, this sustained active engagement, constantly describing what's around you, it really cements the new vocabulary and reinforces natural sentence patterns.
It's moving beyond just taking language in.
Definitely. It's consistent, real-time language production. Even if it's just internal or whispered, this constant low-stakes use of the language as a tool for thinking in the moment, that's far more powerful for developing fluency than just memorizing lists.
Because the language is doing something. It's working.
It's being used for actual cognition right then and there.
And then comes that moment of realization, sitting in a quiet square.
That's the turning point, the big aha moment in the narrative. The character thinks, this morning I was afraid to speak, but now the words come easier. Not perfect, but real.
Not perfect, but real. That feels significant.
It absolutely encapsulates the core message, really. The learner didn't spend the morning studying in a traditional way. They didn't memorize lists,
Oh, textbooks.
no textbooks. Instead, they lived the words. They saw them in the rain. They spoke them in the cafe. They felt them walking through the city. They used English as their main tool to perceive the world, describe it.
And connect with it.
And ultimately, yeah, to feel like they belonged in that moment, in that place.
Yeah.
It's more than just learning words. It's integrating the language into how you actually perceive reality.
Wow. So it changes how you experience things.
Fundamentally.
And the source follows this through. Like, what happens as the day goes on?
Well, as the morning turns to afternoon, the light changes, breaks through the clouds, the city feels, cleaner, softer, and the character. They're smiling at strangers, ordering lunch, saying simple things like, thank you and have a nice day.
Small words, yeah.
Small words, but the source notes, they're spoken with this new, quiet confidence.
Ah, so it's the cumulative effect, all those little moments built up.
Exactly. Those micro success loops we talk about, the constant sensory engagement.
Yeah.
It all builds momentum.
Yeah.
Confidence grows, which leads to more natural use of the language.
And it starts to feel like your language.
It becomes truly yours, yes. Not just something you understand, but something you actively, spontaneously use. You shift from just being an observer to actually being a participant.
This whole deep dive, then, it really drives home that language learning isn't just about the mechanics, the grammar, the vocab lists.
Not primarily, no.
It's about seeing the words, speaking them, feeling them through actual lived sensory experience. The journey we followed, it wasn't about study sessions. It was about using English directly as a way to see the world and connect with it.
And that really leads us to a final thought, perhaps a provocative one for you listening.
Yeah.
Think about the power, the potential in just daring to be part of whatever environment you're in, especially if you're learning or want to learn a new language.
Daring to be part. Okay, so like the next time you find yourself in a perfectly ordinary moment, maybe it is rain outside your window or you smell coffee brewing somewhere.
Yeah, instead of just letting it pass by, approach it with that same kind of curiosity described in the source, that bit of courage.
And try to describe it, even just in your head.
Try describing it, yeah, internally, or even whisper it. Use the language you're learning, even if it's just a few words.
Because that's how it becomes real, becomes yours.
That's what the source suggests. Language truly becomes yours, not just from lessons, but from grabbing on to these real-world moments, using the words bravely, no matter how small they seem.
And it's not just about getting better at the language itself, is it?
No, that's the bigger picture. The process itself, learning to see the world through a new linguistic lens. Well, as the narrative beautifully puts it, that ultimately changes everything.